Hello Sojourners, welcome to our third video on the history of the Sojourner mission. Janet and I are once again here in Cades Cove in the Great Smoky Mountains, although I can tell you we would much prefer to be there at Camp B. We love Camp B, we love you Sojourners, and we're sad that we're not able to be with you this year, but we trust that you're having a great time there in Marshall, Texas. So we're here at Cades Cove in front of a very old house that we believe would be a good candidate for a sojourn. So I hope you'll add it to the board this week. So let's talk some more about our history. Let's fast forward now to 1989. And after the annual workshop, Phil and Linda Johnson went to Conroe, Texas to set up the first permanent sojourner office adjacent to the Conroe Church of Christ, which was our sponsoring congregation at that time. And by that time, in 1989, we had grown to over 120 active members, so our mission was booming. And that growth was a good thing, except it presented some problems. And one of the problems was when you get that many people together, how are you going to house them all? Where are you going to put them all? There weren't really any good options for us. There were campgrounds, but they tended to be expensive. And we were also competing against snowbirds who would typically come to these campgrounds and spend longer periods of time. So a decision was made that we needed to find our own campground. And so people went looking for options, put out some feelers, and in the fall of 1990, Camp B was discovered. At the time, it had been an old youth camp, 37 acres donated by B. Agnew, who lived there. The problem was there was insufficient attendance at the youth camp to justify it continuing in operation. So it was put up for sale by the Washington Street Church of Christ there in Marshall. At the time, it was appraised for $185,000 for all of that acreage, and it was offered to sojourners for $125,000 with $40,000 down, and the interest-free balance would be due in a year. Well, at the time, the camp consisted of a number of facilities. It had a lodge, a pavilion, 9 cabins, 2 shower houses, a camp office, a tool storage shed, and a concessions booth at the sports field. So a couple of really important things in our history happened in 1991. First, the Sojourners came under the eldership at the Burleson Church of Christ. Those elders would oversee our mission and help us out with it, and they continue in that role today. The second thing happened in 1991 was that we had a sojourner workshop in Weslaco, and a report was given on this potential buy of the Camp B property, and a decision was made there at the workshop to purchase it. Money was raised for the down payment, and the balance was paid off within a year. From reading the history, we learned that a number of sojourners made significant contributions to pay off Camp B. In fact, some even took out second mortgages on their homes to come up with the money. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to them for the selflessness that they exhibited. So over the subsequent decades, and even up to today, improvements have been made to Camp B by men and women who have worked there, many of them using skills that they had developed over a lifetime supporting their families. Well, Camp B became operational for the sojourners in 1992, and at that time it consisted of 150 RV sites plus the meeting facilities. So that's the story of Camp B, and as you guys walk around this week and enjoy the camp, I hope you'll take a moment to just sit and think about the camp, think about its history, and to thank God for His providence and His involvement in allowing us to acquire the camp and for the very beautiful and special place that it has become to us. Well, let's move forward now 3 years to 1995. It was that year that our co-director positions were established on a rotational basis to help share the workload in leading our mission and accomplishing the many leadership tasks that are involved in our mission. Well, speaking of co-directors, let me close with 2 quick stories about 2 of our current co-directors, Richard Clark and Denton Wiggins. Let's start with Richard Clark. Prior to the Florida workshop earlier this year, Richard and Ronnie Clark, the Clark brothers, asked Janet and me to dog sit for their 2 dogs, Little Sammy and Little Lily. They wanted us to dog sit for a week so that they could go on a cruise. Well, we agreed to do so, and I took charge of Sammy, walking him 3 times per day, and Janet did the same for little Lily. One morning, Janet wanted to sleep in, and she asked if I could take care of her Lily walking duties, and I agreed to do so. I mean, how hard could it be to walk 2 dogs? So I went to Richard's rig, and I opened the door, and little sweet Lily came running up to me to meet me, and she had a little smile on her face. And as I reached down to pick her up and pull her towards me, she wet all down my arm. I didn't appreciate that, and Richard, you owe me. That brings us to Denton Wiggins. After this past year's Florida workshop, Denton and Beth and Janet and I decided to go to the Florida Keys for a week's vacation, and we were going to spend 6 days at a condo down there. Well, Denton had had some health issues, some problem with circulation in his legs, and his doctor had told him he needed to get compression socks. So no big deal, he went and got the socks. So we got to Key West, and we're walking around the most popular spot in Key West, Mallory Square. It's in the center of town, and Janet and Beth are out in front of us. They're shopping and looking at things, and Denton and I are behind them about 20 yards, and we're strolling along. Well, I don't know how I didn't notice this before, but I looked down, and Denton was wearing rainbow-colored compression socks. Rainbow-colored socks up to his knees at Mallory Square in Key West, Florida, next to another man, namely me. I didn't appreciate that, but I forgave Denton because I love my brother. But Denton, you, just like Richard, owe me for that. Until next time, Steve and Janet are signing off.